My name is Grace Anderson, and for 15 years, I was the family disappointment. While my sister racked up Harvard degrees and six-figure job offers, I spent my days teaching finger painting to 5-year-olds. Last week, at her grand graduation party, my parents handed her the keys to a Tesla and the deed to a $13 million Manhattan penthouse, in front of 200 guests. They called her the only true success in the Anderson family. I stood quietly at the back, invisible as always, until a man in a charcoal suit approached me with an envelope. "Your grandfather knew the truth," he whispered. What happened next would leave my entire family speechless. Before I tell you what was inside that envelope, let me say this: if this story resonates with you, stay until the end. Because one single piece of paper changed my life forever. The Anderson family penthouse sat on the 68th floor, overlooking Central Park. Every morning, I'd watch my parents sip coffee from Waterford crystal mugs, discussing Isabella's future from their $50,000 walnut dining table. The original Monet above the fireplace, yes, the real one, not a print, was worth more than I'd earn in 20 lifetimes as a public school art teacher. Meanwhile, my studio apartment in Queens had water stains on the ceiling and a radiator that groaned like a ghost with anger issues. While Isabella carried Hermes handbags that cost more than my annual rent, I hauled art supplies in a paint-stained canvas tote I decorated myself in college. The contrast wasn't subtle, and my parents made sure everyone noticed. "Grace teaches at PS 47, my mother would tell her country club friends, lowering her voice as if admitting a family scandal. Then, with renewed pride, Isabella just made law review at Harvard. Their comparisons always came in pairs, like salt and pepper, but in their eyes, Isabella was the Himalayan pink salt, and I was the dirt beneath it. But here's what they never knew: I loved my job. Every morning, 23 little faces would light up when I entered the classroom. Their parents, immigrants, single mothers, fathers juggling 3 jobs, would thank me with tears in their eyes when their kids brought home artwork that made them feel seen. My parents never asked about any of that. They didn't know about the awards hidden in my desk drawer, or the letters from parents who said I'd changed their children's lives. To them, success was measured in stock portfolios and Hamptons beach houses. Still, I showed up to every family event, not for them, but for my grandfather. He'd passed a decade ago, but he was the only one who'd ever told me, "Grace, you're going to change the world, just not in the way they expect." I had no idea how right he was. Isabella graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Law last week. The dean himself shook her hand, and White and Case offered her a $215,000 starting salary before she even tossed her cap. Her Patek Philippe watch, a graduation gift from our father, was worth more than my entire year's salary. She was 28, 4 years younger than me, and already had an investment portfolio that would make CEOs weep. Her LinkedIn profile read like a Wall Street fairy tale: Harvard undergrad, Harvard Law, summer associate at 3 Fortune 500 companies, twice published in the Yale Law Journal. Mine said, art teacher at PS 47. Believes every child is an artist. The family group chat that week became a shrine to Isabella's success: photos, videos, congratulatory messages from senators and CEOs. I sent one message: "Congratulations, Bella." It earned a single heart emoji. Nothing more. What no one saw were the 8 National Education Awards tucked in my drawer, the 3 Teacher of the Year plaques, or the art therapy program I built from scratch that now helped 500 children with disabilities across 3 boroughs. But in my family's world, those things had no currency. The invitation to Isabella's graduation party arrived on ivory cardstock so thick it could double as armor. Celebrating Isabella's extraordinary achievement, it read in gold foil. At the bottom, in my mother's handwriting, "Grace, please dress appropriately." I wore my best dress, a simple black sheath from Target. Isabella, of course, wore custom Versace. Why can't you be more like Isabella? That question had followed me my whole life, like a shadow with teeth. When I brought home an A-, Isabella was already 2 grades ahead. When I won a state art competition at 16, Isabella got her Harvard acceptance at 17. My life was a series of footnotes in the great biography of Isabella Anderson, future Supreme Court Justice. At parties, my mother introduced her with a sparkle in her eyes. "This is Isabella, our Harvard law student." Then, with a forced smile, "Oh, and this is Grace. She teaches." That pause before teaches said more than words ever could. I became a teacher because of Mr. Yamamoto, my high school art teacher. Once, after another "Why can't you be like Isabella" lecture, I hid in the supply closet crying. He found me there and said something I never forgot: "Some people build skyscrapers, Grace. Others build souls. Guess which lasts longer?" I wanted to build souls. My parents wanted me to build portfolios. The family photo wall said it all. Isabella's section overflowed with diplomas, newspaper clippings, and pictures with governors. My section? One lonely college graduation photo, half hidden behind Isabella's framed Harvard acceptance letter. 10 years of therapy taught me not to crave their approval. But knowledge and healing aren't the same. So I kept showing up, smiling through the ache. At the St. Regis Ballroom, beneath the glitter of silk-draped ceilings and crystal chandeliers, 200 guests sipped Dom Perignon and nibbled beluga caviar from silver platters worth more than my car. From the corner, the man in the charcoal suit watched me, silent, patient, like he was waiting for his cue. My father tapped his gold pen against his champagne glass. The room went silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we're here to celebrate the only success story that matters in the Anderson family." He raised his glass toward Isabella, glowing in her custom gown like a marble statue carved from ambition. The only success story. I wasn't even a footnote anymore, I was erased. My mother glided between tables, her pearls catching the light. "Isabella starts at White and Case next month," she boasted to the mayor's wife, then spotted me by the shrimp display. "Oh, that's Grace. She teaches finger painting." The way she said it, you'd think I was distributing contraband to toddlers. A woman in Chanel asked what grade I taught. Before I could answer, my mother cut in, "Elementary." "Very, elementary." The woman's smile turned pitying. "How nice that you found something you can do." My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Don't leave early tonight. Your grandfather left you more than memories." I looked around. The man in the charcoal suit caught my gaze, raised his glass slightly, just for me. Then my father took the mic again. "And now, for the real surprise of the evening, Isabella." He pulled out a velvet box. "The keys to your new Tesla Model S Plaid." The crowd gasped. Applause broke out. Isabella held up the key fob like a trophy. But my mother wasn't done. She reached into her Hermes Birkin and produced an envelope. "Inside is the deed to your new home, a $13 million penthouse in Tribeca." Applause thundered again. My champagne glass trembled. That kind of money could fund my school's art program for a century. But instead, it was going to one woman who already had everything. "This Tesla is just the beginning," my father declared. "You've earned it, Isabella. Some people build empires." He paused, glancing at me. "Others finger paint." The words hit like knives. Then my phone buzzed again. "The real show starts in 5 minutes. Don't sign anything." "Sign anything?" Before I could think, my mother's voice cut through the noise. "Grace, come here, please." On stage, Isabella beamed under the spotlight. "Success isn't easy," she began, her voice dripping with polished arrogance. "It takes dedication, ambition, and courage to aim higher than." Her eyes met mine. "Finger paintings and participation trophies." Laughter rippled through the crowd. My face burned. "But tonight isn't about those who settle," she continued, raising her glass. "It's about excellence." That's when the man in the charcoal suit stepped forward. The crowd fell silent. I'm sorry to interrupt, he said calmly. My name is Harold Whitman. I was your grandfather's attorney for 40 years. My father's face drained of color. My mother's hand shook. I have something that must be addressed before this farce continues, Harold said, pulling a leather envelope from his jacket. This is a private family event, my father snapped. Actually, Harold replied evenly, it can't wait, especially considering what you're about to do. The room froze. My parents exchanged a look, a flicker of fear. My father turned back to the mic, speaking too fast. Isabella will also inherit the entire Anderson estate, the company, the properties, everything. She's proven capable of managing substantial assets. The crowd applauded again. Isabella glowed. My mother's smile stretched so wide it nearly cracked her Botox. And Grace, my father continued, voice heavy with condescension, simply doesn't have the capacity for such responsibility. Teaching finger painting is noble, I suppose, but it hardly qualifies one to manage millions. Some build empires, others finger paint. Then my mother produced another document from her purse. Grace, darling, we just need you to sign this waiver of inheritance. It's what's best for everyone. The room went utterly silent. Even the orchestra stopped playing. My father gestured toward the stage. Come on up, Grace. It wasn't a request. 200 eyes followed as I climbed those steps, each one a witness to years of humiliation finally coming to a boil. And that's when everything changed. Someone in the crowd muttered something about knowing one's place. My mother extended the waiver and a Mont-Blanc pen toward me. Just sign it, sweetheart. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Before I could respond, Harold Whitman stepped onto the stage. I really must insist you stop, he said firmly. You have no authority here, my father snapped. Harold's smile wasn't kind. Your father would disagree. And since he's the one who actually built this empire you're so eager to reallocate, I'd say his opinion still matters. The pen felt impossibly heavy in my hand. 200 guests waited in tense silence. Isabella's smile could have sliced glass. The waiver sat on the podium, the dense legal text blurring through the tears I refused to shed. Sign it, Grace, my mother hissed quietly, her voice low enough to stay out of the mic. For once in your life, do the right thing. The right thing for them. Which meant disappearing. Isabella leaned into her microphone. This is what's best for everyone, Grace. You know you can't handle this kind of responsibility. Remember when you couldn't even manage your college loans without crying? Someone in the audience laughed. My hand hovered over the signature line. Grace Anderson. Wait, Harold's voice rang out, sharp and clear. Before you sign that document, there's something you need to know. My father stepped between us. Mr. Whitman, you're trespassing. Security, I'm here as the executor of William Anderson's estate, Harold said louder now. Your grandfather's real estate, the one your parents have been concealing for 10 years. The ballroom fell silent. I could hear the faint click of my mother's pearls as her hand trembled. That's impossible, my father said, though his voice cracked. My father's will was simple, everything went to me. The will you filed was simple, Harold corrected. The actual will, the one stored in 3 separate safety deposit boxes with recorded testimony and multiple witnesses, is anything but. He pulled out a thick document from his leather envelope, the gold seal of New York State glinting under the lights. I have something everyone in this room should see, Harold announced. Something that changes everything about tonight's celebration. Isabella lunged for the waiver. Just sign it, Grace. Whatever this is, it doesn't matter. But my hand had already frozen. Harold was looking at me with eyes that mirrored my grandfather's, kind, steady, and absolutely certain. If you've ever felt dismissed for choosing purpose over profit, please like this video. What comes next will change how you view success. Subscribe for more stories of quiet justice and the power of patience. I looked down at the pen in my hand, then at the faces surrounding me, Isabella, radiant with entitlement. My parents, impatient and expectant. The crowd, waiting for the lesser daughter to know her place. For a moment, I almost gave in. 15 years of being the disappointment weighed on me like iron. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was destined for smaller things, small dreams, small impact. Maybe teaching children to paint rainbows would never compare to arguing corporate mergers. Sometimes loving your family means letting go, I said softly, the microphone catching every word. My mother exhaled, relieved. Isabella smirked. My father nodded approvingly. I positioned the pen above the signature line. One signature, and I'd never have to endure another comparison, another lecture about being more like Isabella. Another dinner where my work was treated like a hobby. The pen touched paper. Your grandfather wrote you letters, Harold said suddenly. 23 of them. Over 10 years. Your parents returned every single one, unopened. My hand froze mid-stroke. What letters? I demanded, looking between my parents. What is he talking about? My mother's face went pale beneath her foundation. It doesn't matter now. Oh, but it does. Harold drew out a stack of worn envelopes. William Anderson spent the last decade documenting something very specific, something about his granddaughters. He held up the real will. Before you sign anything, Grace, you should know what your grandfather knew. You should know why he called you the one who would change everything. The pen slipped from my fingers, clattering onto the podium. Show me, I said. You have no right, my father's voice boomed across the ballroom, his face flushed red. Security, remove this man immediately. 2 guards started forward, but Harold raised the document high. I'd think carefully before you do that, he warned. Interfering with the lawful execution of a will is a felony. And everyone in this room is now a witness. The guards stopped. The crowd murmured. Someone began filming. My mother switched tactics, her tone suddenly syrupy. Mr. Whitman, surely this can wait until Monday. We're having a family celebration. A celebration where you're coercing your daughter into signing away her inheritance rights? Harold raised an eyebrow. How festive. There's nothing to inherit, my father barked. I'm the sole beneficiary. The will was read 10 years ago. A will was read, Harold corrected smoothly. The one you filed after destroying the original, or rather, after you thought you destroyed it. The ballroom gasped. Isabella gripped my father's arm. Daddy, what is he talking about? Your grandfather wasn't a fool, Harold continued. He knew his son well enough to keep multiple copies, each notarized, witnessed, and video recorded. He turned toward me. He also knew both of his granddaughters and made provisions accordingly. My mother fumbled for her phone. Lawrence, we need you at the St. Regis, immediately. Bring the files on, she stopped, realizing every eye was on her. Just come. Calling your lawyer? Harold asked mildly. Good. He'll want to see this, especially Article 7. What's Article 7? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Harold's expression softened. The part your grandfather called the Truth Clause. The section explaining why he spent 10 years observing both of you, documenting everything. My father lunged for the document, but Harold stepped back. Shall we read it together? He asked. Or would you prefer to tell them yourself what you've been hiding? He opened the will, the pages crisp despite their age. This will was signed by William Anderson on March 15, 2015, in the presence of 3 witnesses and a notary public, Harold read aloud. It was subsequently filed with my firm, with copies sent to 2 additional law firms for safekeeping. That's impossible, my father stammered. I handled his estate. You handled what you wanted to, Harold interrupted. Your father knew you would, which is why he gave explicit instructions for when this will should be revealed, after both granddaughters had shown their true character. Tonight seems appropriate. This is ridiculous. Isabella snapped. Even if another will exists, it can't override. Actually, Miss Anderson, Harold interrupted politely, given your Harvard law education, you should know a properly executed later will absolutely overrides an earlier one, especially when the earlier one was, shall we say, creatively edited. My parents exchanged a fearful glance. My mother's hands trembled. Your grandfather spent a decade documenting something very specific, Harold went on. The real contributions his granddaughters made, not their degrees or salaries, but their tangible impact. He pulled out a thick folder. Grace, did you know your grandfather hired a private investigator to follow your career? Not to spy, but to record every award you won, every life you changed, every program you built that your parents ignored. The room was still. Even the waitstaff stopped moving. He has files on both of you, Harold said, glancing between Isabella and me. And based on those, he decided who should inherit the Anderson legacy. This is insane, Isabella protested, her voice shaking. No, Harold said calmly. This is justice. Shall we read Article 7? I want to see authentication, seals, signatures, timestamps, Isabella snapped, her lawyer reflexes kicking in. Anyone can fake old documents. Spoken like a true attorney, Harold replied, amused. He pulled out another folder. Here are the notary seals, 3 separate locations. Authentication from the state of New York. Witness list, Judge Patricia Hornby, D.R. Michael Chen from Mount Sinai, and Eleanor Roosevelt III from the Manhattan Trust Foundation. Isabella flipped through the papers, her face draining with every page. These are real. Of course they are, Harold said. Your grandfather left nothing to chance. He also video recorded the signing. Would you like to hear him explain his decision in his own words? This is entrapment, my father shouted. You mean I waited, Harold countered. Your father predicted you'd try this. He said, and I quote, he'll attempt to give everything to Isabella the moment he thinks he can get away with it. Wait for that moment, then show them the truth. The audience was transfixed. Someone whispered, better than Netflix. Isabella turned to our parents. You knew, she said quietly. You knew there was another will, and you hid it. My mother's silence said everything. 10 years, Harold said. They've known for 10 years. They found the first copy in your grandfather's desk and destroyed it. What they didn't know was that he'd already filed 3 others and recorded the signing himself. I'll challenge this in court, Isabella said, though her voice trembled. On what grounds? Harold asked. Mental incompetence? His medical records show perfect cognitive health. Undue influence? He hadn't spoken to Grace in years when this was written. Face it, counselor, this will is bulletproof. He turned to page 7. Now, shall we discuss the inheritance criteria your grandfather set? Harold adjusted his glasses, steadying the document. Article 7, Conditions of Inheritance. I, William Anderson, being of sound mind and body, declare that my estate shall pass to the granddaughter who demonstrates genuine service to humanity, measured not by degrees or income, but by verifiable positive impact on others' lives. The ballroom was so silent, I could hear my heartbeat. Furthermore, Harold continued, this impact must be documented by independent third parties, no family, no friends, only institutions or individuals with no personal stake. Isabella gave a brittle laugh. That's completely subjective. How do you even measure positive impact? Your grandfather anticipated that, Harold replied, opening a folder marked Grace Anderson. He set precise criteria, letters from beneficiaries, awards from recognized institutions, media coverage, and professional evaluations, all verified and dated. He set the folder on the podium. It was 3 inches thick. Grace Anderson, he read aloud, 8 National Education Excellence Awards. 3-time Teacher of the Year. Founder of Art Heals, a therapy program serving over 500 children with disabilities across 3 boroughs. Published in the Journal of Art Therapy for groundbreaking work with autism spectrum disorders. Recognized by the Department of Education for innovation in inclusive education. My mother gasped. That's not possible. She never told us. Because you never asked, Harold said quietly. You were too busy celebrating Isabella to notice Grace was quietly changing lives. He held up another document. Letters from 237 families, independently verified, crediting Grace with transforming their children's lives. 14 children once nonverbal now communicate through art. 3 suicide preventions directly linked to her intervention. Tears streamed down my cheeks. I hadn't known he knew. I hadn't known anyone was watching. Your grandfather called you the quiet one who serves, Harold said gently. He saw what others refused to see. He opened another folder filled with photos and letters. Your grandfather hired investigators not to spy, but to record what your parents ignored. Grace, did you know the mayor's office has your photo on their wall of New York's quiet heroes? I shook my head, speechless. 3 years ago, you used every bit of your savings to keep your art program alive after the school lost its funding. You even took on a second job tutoring just to afford supplies, and never told anyone. Harold pulled out a bank statement. Your grandfather's investigator documented every sacrifice you made, he said. Then a voice came from the crowd. Mrs. Chen from the PTA stood up. That's my son's teacher. She saved his life. He was diagnosed with selective mutism and didn't speak for 2 years. Grace taught him to paint his words, now he won't stop talking. She turned sharply toward my parents. You should be ashamed. Others began to rise. A man in a navy suit said, she taught my daughter after she lost her hearing. Grace told her art doesn't need words or sound. Another parent added, my son has autism. Grace spent her lunch breaks helping him, for free. He just got accepted to art school. My parents looked stunned. Isabella's mouth hung open. Your grandfather followed every story, Harold continued, unfolding several newspaper clippings. Local teacher transforms lives through art. Innovative program brings hope to special needs families. The quiet revolution in room 203. He looked directly at my parents. You had every chance to know this, but you chose not to look. Then he turned to Isabella. Now, Miss Anderson, would you like me to read your grandfather's assessment of your contributions, or skip to his final decision? Her face hardened. Read it. Harold nodded. Very well, but understand, your grandfather was thorough and brutally honest. He pulled out Isabella's file. It was noticeably thinner. Isabella Anderson. Harvard Law. Summa cum laude. Law Review Editor. Starting salary, $215,000. He paused. Community service, mandatory 40 pro bono hours required by the university. No additional volunteer work beyond the requirement. Isabella's face flushed. I was building my career. You were building your resume, Harold corrected. Your grandfather noted the difference. He flipped a page. In 2019, you volunteered to organize a charity auction for underprivileged children. You raised $30,000. He stopped. You also charged the charity a $15,000 administrative fee. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. That was legitimate compensation for my time, Isabella snapped. From a children's charity? Harold's brows lifted. Your grandfather found that particularly revealing. He continued reading. In 2020, you offered pro bono services to a homeless shelter, but withdrew after learning their tax deduction wasn't large enough. In 2021, you volunteered to mentor inner-city students. You attended one session, took photos for LinkedIn, and never returned. My parents stood frozen. This wasn't the Isabella they'd built up for years. Harold gestured to my thick folder. Grace has letters from the Department of Education, the National Art Teachers Association, the Autism Society, and the Children's Hospital of New York. He lifted an official envelope. And one from the White House Office of Public Engagement, commending her for extraordinary service to America's most vulnerable children. He raised both folders. One granddaughter has degrees and dollars. The other has changed hundreds of lives. Your grandfather's will is clear about which one inherits. The crowd murmured, but Harold wasn't done. There's more, he said, his voice heavy. Article 7 includes a second clause, something your grandfather called the humility provision. At that moment, Isabella's lawyer arrived, slightly out of breath. Don't say another word, he warned his client. Oh, I think everyone needs to hear this, Harold said with a calm smile. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the strongest. He paused. If this story touches you, please comment below. Where are you from, and what time are you watching? Subscribe to follow the climax that's about to unfold. Lawrence Fitzgerald, Isabella's attorney, pushed through the crowd in his immaculate Armani suit. This is highly irregular, he objected. Any will contest should be handled in probate court, not at a social event. There's nothing to contest, Harold replied coolly. I'm executing William Anderson's explicit instructions. He wanted this revealed publicly, in front of witnesses, specifically if the family ever tried to exclude Grace. Isabella grabbed Lawrence's arm. Tell them this won't hold up. Tell them I'll sue for defamation, for emotional distress, for what? Harold interrupted. For revealing the truth? Your grandfather's records are factual. Pro bono hours are public record. Charity finances are publicly available. Your own LinkedIn posts confirm the mentorship story. The shelter verified you only attended once. This is character assassination. Isabella's voice cracked. No, another voice said firmly. It was Judge Patricia Hornby, one of the will's witnesses. This is accountability. I watched William Anderson sign that will myself. He was heartbroken by what his son had become, how wealth replaced humanity. He told me, I built this fortune to help people, not create monsters. Parents from my school began standing one by one. Mr. Rodriguez, my son had severe ADHD. Grace spent every Thursday after school with him for 2 years. Never charged a penny. He's in college now because of her. Mrs. Kim, my daughter was bullied for her disability. Grace started an anti-bullying art program that changed the entire school. Dr. Patel, she volunteers every Saturday at our children's hospital, bringing art supplies she buys herself. Isabella's eyes darted around in panic. Money doesn't make you worthy, Isabella, I said quietly. Impact does. You manipulated him, she snapped. You hadn't even seen him for 5 years. By your parents' design, Harold said firmly. They told him you were too busy with your little teaching job. My father's CEO instincts kicked in, negotiate when cornered. Let's be reasonable, he said. We can work out an arrangement. Split everything 50-50. That's fair. Fair? Harold's tone sharpened. Was it fair when you told your father Grace dropped out of college? She graduated with honors. Was it fair when you said she was unemployed? She was teaching full-time. Was it fair when you returned every letter he sent her? My mother's hand trembled as she clutched her Hermes bag, tears streaking her makeup. We only wanted what was best for the family. Isabella had potential. Grace didn't. Harold gestured toward the audience. Half this room can testify to Grace's potential. She fulfilled hers by lifting others, not by stepping on them. Please, my mother pleaded. Grace, think of the family reputation. If this gets out, it's already out, someone shouted. Phones were recording from multiple angles. My father tried a new tactic. Grace, you don't understand complex finances. The company needs someone with business experience. The company? Harold laughed. You mean the real estate empire built on your father's patents? The ones he created as a teacher, before he knew his son would value square footage over souls. Lawrence whispered urgently to my parents. Isabella stood frozen, her perfect image crumbling. We could challenge mental capacity, Lawrence muttered, but his words carried. Judge Hornby stood again. I'd be happy to testify to William's state of mind. Sharp as ever, he beat me at chess the day before he died. My father's shoulders slumped. My mother collapsed into a chair. Grace, my father said softly, what do you want? For 15 years, I'd been silent, the quiet one, the disappointment, the afterthought. Now 200 people waited for my answer. What do I want? I repeated. My voice filled the room. I wanted parents who saw me. Who valued compassion over compensation. Who understood that teaching isn't settling, it's shaping the future, one child at a time. I stepped toward the microphone, my dress suddenly feeling like armor. For years, I believed I was less than Isabella, because my car was old, my bank account small, and my apartment lacked a doorman. I looked at my parents. You taught me that worth equals wealth. Grandfather knew better. The room was silent, except for soft sobs, Mrs. Chen again, holding her son's hand. I don't need your money, I said, my voice steady. I needed parents who celebrated my first teaching award the way you celebrated Isabella's first A+. A family that understood changing one child's life matters more than billing hours. Isabella finally spoke. So sanctimonious. You think you're better than me because you're poor. No, I said simply. I'm fulfilled because I'm useful. There's a difference between being successful and being significant. Grandfather understood that. Harold cleared his throat. Speaking of your grandfather's understanding, there's one final condition in Article 7. The terms for Isabella. Everyone turned toward him. Your grandfather didn't disinherit you, Isabella, Harold said, but your inheritance comes with conditions, Harold said. Isabella's eyes lit up. What conditions? 2 years of documented public service, he explained. Real service. Not photo ops or resume padding. Teaching, volunteering, genuine contribution to society. Only then will you receive your portion. That's extortion. Isabella snapped. That's education, Harold corrected calmly. Your grandfather's final lesson, what your parents failed to teach. Privilege comes with responsibility. I have one condition too, I said. Every head turned toward me. Harold smiled knowingly, as if he had been waiting for this moment. Before you share that, Grace, there's one more thing. He flipped to another page. The humility provision, subsection C. He began to read aloud, should any beneficiary attempt to coerce, manipulate, or pressure another beneficiary to surrender their inheritance, the coercing party forfeits all claims immediately and permanently. My parents went pale. Isabella gripped the podium for balance. Furthermore, Harold continued, if such coercion occurs in public, witnessed by multiple parties, the forfeited inheritance transfers entirely to the wronged party, activating the emergency trust fund of $15 million, separate from the estate. My father fumbled for his phone, scrolling frantically. That's ironclad, he muttered. Tonight, Harold said, addressing the stunned room, Robert and Margaret Anderson, along with Isabella Anderson, attempted to pressure Grace into signing away her inheritance in front of 200 witnesses. The conditions of subsection C are met. 15 million, Isabella whispered weakly. Your grandfather was very specific, Harold explained. He said, if they gang up on Grace, and they will, she should have immediate resources to stand on her own. He raised a tablet. The transfer was triggered the moment Grace was called on stage to sign that waiver. Your grandfather's financial advisor has been monitoring via livestream. And yes, the charity photographer you hired, Mr. Anderson, was documenting this for the estate. My father collapsed into a chair. He planned all of this. He knew you, Harold said simply. He knew you'd wait for a public moment, to humiliate Grace, to pressure her into compliance. He knew Isabella would play along for her own gain. And he knew Grace would endure it quietly, as she always has. The company? My mother asked weakly. Transfers to a trust with Grace as primary beneficiary and decision-maker, Harold replied. Though, your grandfather hoped she'd convert it into a foundation, focused on art therapy and special education. Isabella was crying now, not elegant tears, but the raw kind that come with true loss. My job offer with White and Case has a morality clause, Lawrence murmured. Being part of inheritance fraud, they'll rescind it. The Tesla key slipped from Isabella's trembling hand, clattering on the marble floor. Lawrence, pale, scrolled through his tablet. The legal consequences are severe. This public coercion constitutes inheritance fraud. The Bar Association will investigate. Your law license application, Judge Hornby interjected. Attempting to defraud a family member publicly? The committee will have a field day. Harold produced more documents. The estate accounts were frozen 40 minutes ago, when the coercion began. Judge Martinez signed the court orders remotely. He held up sealed papers. Robert Anderson, your company access is suspended pending investigation. The brownstone, the Hampton house, all assets, frozen. You can't do this, my father roared. I'm not doing anything, Harold said calmly. I'm following William Anderson's explicit instructions. If Robert tries to steal from Grace, and he will, stop him immediately and publicly. My mother's phone rang. Her hand shook as she answered. Hello? What do you mean frozen? All of them? She turned to my father. The credit cards aren't working. The penthouse? Isabella asked, panicked. The one your parents gave you, Harold said, was never theirs to give. It's part of the estate, which now belongs to Grace. A low whistle came from the crowd. $13 million in cash, a $30 million company, $15 million liquid assets, and a $6 million art collection, Harold summarized. $64 million total. Isabella's legs gave out. Someone pushed a chair behind her. That Grace's parents tried to steal from her, Judge Hornby said loudly, ensuring every phone recording caught it. This is why William Anderson wanted witnesses. The crowd buzzed. By morning, this would be all over the Upper East Side, and the internet before midnight. The Tesla? Isabella whispered. Purchased with estate funds, Harold said. It'll be returned Monday. Every symbol of my parents' success had been built on theft, on taking from the daughter they deemed unworthy. Isabella Anderson, Harvard Law graduate and golden child, was crumbling. Her perfect image smeared with tears and mascara. I don't understand, she sobbed. I did everything right. Perfect grades, perfect school, perfect job. Perfect, Harold said gently, isn't the same as good. Your grandfather wrote that you had every advantage but empathy, every skill but kindness. Maybe losing everything will teach you what gaining everything couldn't. For the first time, Isabella looked at me, really looked at me. You knew, she whispered. You knew you were worth more. I didn't know about the will, I said softly. But I knew my worth wasn't measured in dollars. You taught me that, actually, by chasing money and missing meaning. I've never actually helped anyone, she admitted through tears. Not without expecting something back. Silence fell. Even the waiters stopped moving. I don't even know how, Isabella said. How to help, to care about someone else's success more than my own. You made me this way, she told our parents. You praised achievement and ignored character. And now I'm 28 and I don't know who I am without my resume. That's the first honest thing you've said in years, my mother whispered. Isabella stood shakily. Grace. I need that job. Not White and Case, whatever you'll let me do. I need to learn. My father, the titan of real estate, looked small. I measured everything wrong, he said, his voice trembling. Stock prices, square footage, net worth. Everything but what mattered. He turned to me. Grace, you were never the disappointment. I was. My mother's perfect posture sagged. We framed Isabella's Harvard letter, she said softly, but not the 237 thank you letters from the families you helped. We were wrong. Applause began, not for their confession, but for the truth finally being spoken. My father built his fortune as a teacher, my dad said, smiling sadly. He never cared about money, only knowledge. And I forgot that. Harold nodded. Every week he told me, Robert's building a monument to nothing. Grace is building lives. We measured success in dollars, my mother said, looking at me, when we should have measured it in lives changed. The estate photographer documented everything, the fall, the redemption, the truth. My father straightened. Grace, we don't deserve forgiveness, but we're asking for it anyway. I looked at them, broken, finally honest. I accept the inheritance, I said clearly. All of it, as grandfather intended. Isabella gasped. But, I continued, I also accept his vision for it. The company becomes the Anderson Foundation for Art Therapy and Special Education. The buildings will house programs, not profits. The money will fund teachers, not takeovers. I turned to Isabella. You want to learn to serve? Start Monday. Minimum wage, working with our toughest kids, the ones who scream, who throw paint, who test your patience. You'll celebrate their small wins. 2 years, not because the will demands it, but because that's how long it takes to understand that teaching isn't about you. Yes, she said through tears. Anything. I faced my parents. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means moving forward. You'll have a modest trust, enough to live, not to flaunt. The brownstone stays with us, but the Hampton House becomes a summer camp for special needs children. My mother gasped. The Hampton House? Grandfather wanted it to ring with children's laughter, not cocktail chatter, Harold said. Grace will be graceful even in victory, he added with a smile. This isn't victory, I said quietly. It's justice, and justice includes redemption. Turning to the audience, New York's elite who once mocked me, I said, the Anderson Foundation will hire real people for real work. No more charity galas, just hands-on help for children who need us. Isabella looked at me. What about your condition? Family therapy, I said. All of us, weekly, for a year. We're going to learn how to be a real family. Harold's eyes softened. Your grandfather knew this would happen, he said. He told me, Grace will teach them what I couldn't, that love isn't measured in dollars. 6 months later, the Anderson Foundation served 2,000 children in 5 states. The Hampton House hosted its first summer camp. The brownstone ballroom now echoed with laughter instead of music. Isabella lasted a month before breaking down. A child with autism splattered her with purple paint, and for the first time in years, she laughed. He said purple sounds happy, she told me later. Now, she runs our sensory art program, earning $43,000 a year, driving a Honda Civic, and glowing with joy. My parents volunteer every week. My father reads stories, my mother helps with art. Last week, a child's paint-covered hug left handprints on her blouse, and she wore them proudly all day. The foundation employs 50 full-time teachers and partners with 15 hospitals, 30 schools, and countless families. White and Case called Isabella again. She smiled and said, No thanks, I have purple happiness to paint. Harold now serves on our board. Your grandfather would be proud, he said once. I think he knew, I replied. He always knew what would grow from the seeds he planted. I still teach at PS 47, same classroom, same kids. Only now, every child has their own paints, their own easel, their own chance to shine. Grandfather didn't leave me millions. He left me a mission. The will wasn't about money, it was about meaning. He wrote once, "Grace, you're painting the world better, one child at a time. Someday I'll make sure you have all the colors you need." He kept his promise. Now my parents are smaller, in the best way. More humble, more human. The art collection hangs in children's hospitals across the country. And Harold, that quiet man in the charcoal suit, still watches from the back of every event, smiling. He once told me, "Your grandfather said you'd know the difference between having wealth and being wealthy." He was right. Because real inheritance isn't money. It's purpose.